Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Journey into Tech series, y'all. This is our last wonderful event for the month of September. We're going to be having these every month, and we're so excited. I'm so excited to see all of you here. If you are excited, drop some fire emojis in the chat because we have really one of my most favorite colleagues here at Apple. She is absolutely phenomenal, amazing, and I cannot wait for her to share some of that awesome sprinkle of Black Girl magic with you all. Before we get into that, I just want to say, you all, we have been moving and rolling along super strong. Thank you all so very much for tuning in on YouTube and also LinkedIn Live. If you are tuning in to LinkedIn, please make sure that you are following us on LinkedIn, please. Okay, go ahead and click on that follow button. We are releasing bi-weekly, twice a month. Yes, bi-weekly newsletters also on LinkedIn. So if you want to know more about events that are happening in New York City, events that are happening with us, how you can also connect with potential mentors and incredible individuals like Angie, please go ahead and make sure that you are leaning into that as well. Okay. For those of you who are on YouTube, y'all, please give us some love on YouTube. Okay, support the community, honey, by clicking subscribe to us on YouTube and also thumbs up this video so all of those who are interested in software engineering, maybe learning also about this incredible, wonderful woman in tech, they'll be able to find this content as well. Um, Again, we're super excited to see you all. I see that there are so many emojis dropping in the chat. So that you all stay tuned and understand that we have so many events planned, not only this event, but also throughout the rest of the month or rest of the year, I should say. We have a calendar that you can subscribe to. So by going to our link tree, I'm going to go ahead and drop the link in the chat. But by going to our link tree, you guys can go ahead and subscribe to our wonderful calendar of events. You can add it to your Google Calendar, I believe also Apple Calendar, and you'll be able to see all of the events that are coming up between now and the end of December. So you can plan accordingly. We have a mix of in-person events. We have a mix of virtual events as well for those of you who are out of the New York City area. We definitely want to continue to show love to you all as well. So please feel free to continue to join us in that way. If you all are looking for more ways to connect with us, maybe more intimately, maybe finding your tech bestie or whatever have you, you all can connect with us and connect with the community on Slack. So please feel free to, I'm going to drop another link in the chat for you to join us on Slack. Feel free to introduce yourself. We won't bite, we promise. And you will be able to find some incredible individuals there as well. So I know that this is a really long and link, but please feel free to click on that, and that will also give you access to our Slack community. We have folks from all spaces of tech, marketing, engineering, product, you name it, sales, business operations, all the things. So no matter where you are in your journey and no matter where you'd like to be in your journey, we want to make sure that you have folks that are supporting you along the way. Of course, y'all. Obviously, you didn't come here for me to speak this long, but I want to go ahead and introduce our wonderful, wonderful, wonderful speaker on today. Angie is amazing. I'm super honored to have her here. She has had a fantastic career journey, and she's here to show us and share how she's navigated her way into tech and what it has been like for her to do so. She's made an incredible impact as well, and obviously is working at one of the largest leading tech companies too. As an application engineer, Angie works on building innovative solutions that have real impact. She's also passionate about mentoring and supporting others as they start their journey or transition into their careers. Today, Angie will give us an inside look into her role and offer valuable insights to those who are aspiring to follow a similar path. So, without further ado, welcome to the stage.
Hello. Thank you for having me. I'm super honored to be here. First and foremost, thank you so much, Chanel, for having me. You are absolutely such a bright light, one of my favorite people to work with. You make Apple so much fun, and I like that we're desk buddies. So I tell everyone about Mentor Me Collective and the amazing work that you're doing here. I actually just spoke to someone who was looking for mentorship in the application engineering space. And she was looking for resources on like mentorship programs and like just ways to break into tech. And I told her to go to the Mentor Me Collective because I think it's amazing. I recommend it to everyone. And if
Wow.
I had a resource like this when I was breaking into tech, oh my god, it would have made my journey so much easier. So again, the work you do is absolutely incredible for people trying to break into this industry, and I'm just very happy to be here.
Angie, you are so kind and so sweet, and I'm so blessed
Of
to have
course.
incredible individuals like you who are advocating for our community even when we're not around. So
Yeah,
it's people like
absolutely.
you that help to make our community go round and continue doing the awesome work that we're doing. So
Thank
without
you.
further ado, over to you, madam.
Thank you. Cool. So, welcome to Introduction to Application Engineering, featuring my journey into tech. Very happy to be speaking with you all today. So, just for the agenda, we'll go into a little bit about me and my journey, and then we'll go into the key skills for application engineers that I think are just absolutely important if you want to break into this career. The development life cycle and like what my day to day looks like at Apple, and then preparing for technical interviews. So everything that you'll need to consider when preparing for a technical interview, and then what's next. Cool. So, a little bit about my journey. I felt like this was a good slide to add, just because I feel like my journey wasn't super traditional. So, in 2015, I started my undergrad at University of Miami. And before I switched to computer science, I was actually a pre-med major. It was something I wasn't super passionate about. And as soon as I took an organic chemistry class, I just that was my breaking point. I dropped the entire major and decided that yeah, I definitely don't want to be a doctor. Plus, I'm squeamish, so I'm not really sure what I was thinking pursuing pre med. But the next logical step for me was computer science. I always enjoyed solving puzzles and problems, so I figured it would be fun and I felt like it would align to the things that I enjoyed. And so I switched to computer science and completed it in 2 years before graduating. So, a few months after graduating, two things happened. First, I decided to apply for Georgia Tech for my master's in interactive intelligence. I did this mainly because I had no software engineering internships like a lot of my peers did and do, honestly. A lot of people at Apple, I feel like they had so many internships at big tech companies. They started interning when they were freshmen or something. And I'm here to prove that you don't need to do that. You just need to show up as your authentic self and pass a technical interview. But we'll get to that. So, also after college, I ended up getting a job right when I got accepted to Georgia Tech. So, my fears of not getting hired because of no software engineering experience ended up not being true. Um, I started my career at Rapid7, which is a cybersecurity startup, and I worked as a backend software engineer on tools such as Insight IDR, which is an incident detection and response tool um, that's used honestly at a lot of companies within like their infosec sector. So this was fun, and I felt like I learned a lot, and I got to dip my toes into the tech industry. So towards the middle of 2020, I yearned for a job change just because I felt like I wasn't really learning much from my current job anymore. And I feel like that's a good litmus test in general for staying at a job versus leaving. I asked myself, like, is there potential for me to grow anymore? Am I excited about my future here? If the answer to any or both of those are basically false, then that's when I decided it was time to go. So I cold applied to a lot of companies, including Apple, and I didn't think I would get it. Um, just because like Apple just seemed like one of those really like mysterious companies that honestly not I hadn't talked to anyone in software engineering, even other friends that work there. So I just really didn't think it was possible to land at Apple. And so I applied for Apple. I also applied for Goldman Sachs. And when I applied for Goldman Sachs, I actually ended up doing a phone interview where they asked me like this insanely hard coding question, and I bombed it. Like I just couldn't answer the question. And I think it's funny because now I work with Goldman Sachs. Like that's our bank for Apple Card, and so it felt like a really full circle moment. Not getting into Goldman Sachs, but then getting into Apple, and I feel like Apple was just such a better fit for me. So I'm glad that it worked out that way. Um, and so basically, with Apple, I ended up getting a call back. A recruiter reached out to me. I honestly thought it was like a scam or something. I just could not believe that Apple was reaching out to me. So I responded to the recruiter and went through a few technical rounds before ultimately getting the job. Um, so today I work on Apple Card, but I have done some work around Apple Pay and Apple Pay Later as well. And within the Apple Card space, my first project ever was Apple Card Family. But I've also worked on other pieces like the Daily Cash Hub on Wallet. And there's some exciting projects I'm working on at the moment. So now getting into the key skills that I think are very important for anyone looking to get into application engineering. So the first thing here is software documentation. Clear, concise, and well-structured documentation ensures that code is understandable and maintainable by others, including future engineers. And there's actually been so many times where I've been told to go ask someone about XYZ because it's not written down anywhere. And I make it a point now of jotting down notes after talking to someone about like a specific topic and just writing it down, putting it in our documentation so that people that are coming after me don't have to keep asking the same questions. It's just in one place where you could find it easily. So examples of software documentation in my day-to-day. We have a technical spec document with Goldman Sachs. And in this document, we outline our API agreement between us and them for all aspects of Apple Card. It's incredibly important to know how to describe what the API does, the request and response body, all the error scenarios, and examples of what a sample request and response would look like. Other things we'll document here is like the SLA for a certain API. And an SLA is just a service level agreement. And it could basically mean, for example, if I make a request to Goldman with API XYZ, we expect the response time will be no more than 10 seconds. So for example, in Apple Card today, we promise a user that they'll have a decision within a minute of either you're approved for Apple Card or declined. In order for this to be possible, and in order for this to be one of our most like attractive features for getting an Apple Card, instant decisioning, SLAs make this possible in our spec agreement. And so other examples of software documentation include MSDs. And MSDs are basically a flow diagram between various components in an architecture. So let's say a user takes their phone and taps it on a turnstile. A flow diagram could be a service that registers the tap. Then there's an arrow pointing from that service to another service that performs an auth on the transaction, then another service that calls your bank and withdraws the money from your account, and so on. So from tapping your phone to withdrawing the money from your account and letting you through on the turnstile, we capture this experience in an MSD. And there's so many more documentation examples, but those are a few that I typically deal with on a day-to-day basis. So the other important skill here is software maintenance. So every engineer will have to maintain a code base or several, which is honestly a skill in its own right. Software maintenance is crucial for ensuring that applications stay functional, secure, and efficient over time. As technology and user needs evolve, the code base will too naturally. So we need to be able to refine existing systems to address bugs, performance bottlenecks, and stability concerns as our product continues to grow. So examples of this in practice that I deal with on a day-to-day basis, they can involve debugging production issues that arise. Another piece too is ensuring backward compatibility, which is basically the ability for newer versions of software to integrate with older versions. So any feature we introduce, we have to make sure it doesn't break any existing features, which you can imagine working on Apple Card, that needs to be on point. Like, we cannot break the experience for millions of users. So it's very important there. And so the next thing here that's very important is system design. So system design involves creating scalable and robust architectures that can handle the requirements of the application and future growth. A scalable design is one that can accommodate increased user traffic or data volume without significant performance issues. So I'll say this is one of the hardest lessons I've learned at Apple. Coming from a small startup and designing solutions there did not prepare me for the level of skill I had to design for on Apple Card. I had to work on solutions for a product with over 12 million users. And that was a very humbling transition that I struggled with at first. Just because there were designs I proposed that worked perfectly fine in theory. Like, they made sense. They just weren't scalable. So it's really important to think of the solutions that you come up with, not, just so that 1,000 people can use it without performance concerns, but like consider upwards of millions of users. And also, like, when considering a design, it's important to understand the trade-offs between performance and scalability. So the next piece of this is analysis and problem solving. So application engineers, they frequently face very difficult problems that require analytical thinking and creative solutions. Therefore, strong problem-solving skills are necessary for debugging, troubleshooting, system design, honestly, everything. Identifying a problem is the first step. But then you'll need to analyze the root cause of the problem, use cases that trigger that problem, and potential solutions for that problem with pros and cons for each solution. And then the next step here is, or the next skill rather, software design and development. So this is a core skill for any application engineer. The ability to write clean, efficient, and scalable code is fundamental. This also includes knowledge of various programming languages and frameworks to develop robust software solutions. So I would say the key here for this skill, and something to keep in mind, is just ask yourself, like, am I writing efficient and maintainable code? Am I using best practices for software architecture? Do I have strong knowledge of algorithms, data structures, and design patterns? And you'll find, like, through auditing yourself that way, at least for me, it helps me make sure that like my code is clean and efficient before I basically like open up a PR for it. So you also learn that it's easy to write code, but much harder to write clean, efficient code, which is another lesson that I learned in my professional career. So the last thing here is communication. And I added this because I feel like it is a vastly underrated skill amongst engineers. But I will die on the hill that it's as important, if not more important, than any other skill on this list. Um, as engineers working in tech, collaboration is a way of life. My principle is to always over communicate. So I'll set up meetings to go over an architectural design with anyone willing to listen, honestly, even people that aren't engineers. It's in these meetings you can learn so much from different perspectives that you wouldn't have if it was 5 engineers sitting in a room. Within this skill, I think it's important to note here that it's really important to be able to explain technical concepts to non-engineers, being able to speak to cross-functional teams about what you're working on and designing, communicating with your manager with regular status updates on your projects, so on and so forth. Communication is king for me. Okay, so this is basically the process that I go through for a new feature from start to finish. And so the first step here is requirements gathering. Usually, at least in my career at Apple, devs are pretty hands off for this. The product manager comes with the business requirements, then we figure out the technical requirements. And we can't start development until we have a clear set of requirements. And we'll usually work with our product team and project managers here to land on a set of requirements that we could actually go on with and design for. The next thing here, designing high-level architectural diagrams. So now that we have the requirements, we can go off on our own to assess the overall system today and see what we'll need to change in order to accommodate these new requirements. This is where the MSD that I mentioned comes in. And we'll use the MSD to capture these changes, and it just makes it really easy to take it to different teams and present the flow to them that way. The next step for this, design APIs. So after we have the high-level architecture, we'll then have to update the technical spec document. And that was also mentioned on the last slide. We need to update this document to define new APIs or update existing ones. So once we have that, we'll move on to review the design. This is where communication comes in as an important skill. We'll need to conduct a design review to ensure the architecture and API designs meet the requirements and is aligned with best practices. Typically, we'll have an engineering review, then a wider review with cross-functional teams such as product, performance, security, legal, etc. And the goal here is to come away with a finalized design that's ready for development and is aligned on by all cross-functional teams. So when we have that, then we could actually start development. So when we begin the coding phase, right, this is where actual implementation will occur. And this could last anywhere between 2 weeks to several months to a year. It just sort of depends on how much work needs to be done. Now, once we've ended development, we have this term called dev complete. This concludes the coding phase, marking the point where the application meets functional requirements and all planned features have been implemented. Now, testing can begin. So depending on the company, either the application engineer is expected to do end-to-end testing, or there's a team dedicated to that. At Apple, at least for the team that I'm on, we have the luxury of having an entire testing team that'll take care of this for us. At my last company, we did not. So I've had best of both worlds, but I'm much happier pushing my least favorite part of the cycle onto a team. So I will say I prefer Apple in that regard. Then deployment will come next. So the tested application is then put into a production environment. End users will now have access to what you've done, for better or worse. And then this step also includes deployment monitoring, usually by an SRE team, to make sure the applications are running smoothly. So, of course, this life cycle can change depending on the company or maybe even the products or features you're working on, but this is usually like the rough baseline that I found has held true. Okay. So now getting to the piece of like, okay, how do I prepare for a technical interview? I feel like everyone's process is different and it's really about like tweaking it for what works best for you. But I will say for me, this is what I did. And so I also want to start off by saying I don't necessarily agree with how most technical interviews are done today. Answering unnecessarily complex coding questions with perfect code isn't a good judge of someone's engineering abilities, in my opinion. So that's my disclaimer. But unfortunately, that's how the tech industry works today. So this is the system that I've used to sort of crack it, I guess. And yeah, we could go through some of these resources. So starting with data structures and algorithms. If you have 6 months to prepare for your interview cycle, I'd start with the algorithm design manual. This will give you a deeper understanding of algorithms. And I like this book because it provides practical advice on design and analysis, as well as real world applications. And it's a great resource if you want to go beyond basic algorithms and really dive deep into problem solving techniques. I believe this book is also used in quite a few data structure and algorithms classes for computer science undergrad. So for people that didn't necessarily have like the traditional like computer science background, I think going through this book and really understanding it and understanding all the data structures and algorithms in this book will put you like basically on the same, or you'll have the same foundation roughly as someone that had a more traditional background. If you have 3 months to prepare, I just look at Cracking the Coding Interview by Gail Lockman McDowell. This is one of the most popular books for technical interview preparation. She landed a job at Google, which has arguably some of the hardest interview questions I've ever encountered. So definitely a good resource that'll help you prepare for technical interviews. Also, I cannot recommend LeetCode enough. I think it's a necessity and should be paired with either or both of the first 2 books. For those who don't or haven't had experience with LeetCode yet, it's basically a website that offers a huge library of practice problems across a wide range of difficulties and topics. It also provides real interview questions from top companies like Google, Facebook, and Amazon. So you could practice with the types of problems you're likely to encounter in an actual interview. And I think their premium feature is great. I've definitely used it in the past and filtered by company. I did that for Goldman Sachs actually, and the question that they asked me, I was able to find it on LeetCode as part of the questions they typically ask their applicants in technical interviews. So it is a very, very good resource if you're the type of person that wants to sort of have like an idea for the questions that you will specifically be asked for a technical interview. So basically how I would use the books that I was reading and pair it with LeetCode is that I would read a chapter from, let's say, the algorithm design manual. And let's say that chapter is on linked lists. Once I read the chapter and worked through the practice questions in that chapter, I'd then go on LeetCode and sort the questions from easy to hard. Realistically, you won't really have to answer a hard unless I guess you're Goldman Sachs and they and they hate their engineers or something. I don't know. But I just say learn easy and medium questions. Go through all the easy questions until you've identified patterns. Learn those patterns really well because once you learn the patterns, it doesn't really matter um, how many questions you do. And I stand by that. I feel like it's more about quality and learning the patterns than doing like 500 LeetCode questions, and you'll save time. Um, and so once you learn the patterns and you've identified them for the easy questions, move on to the medium. Usually LeetCode medium questions are a mixture of patterns. So and these are a mixture of patterns that you've learned in easy. So once you have that foundation with LeetCode easy, LeetCode medium is not that bad of like a step up. And then even going back to the what I was talking about with like specific companies having their interview questions on LeetCode, you could go to Apple on LeetCode, go to their questions on linked lists, sort those questions from easy to medium, or even sort it from most popularly used in real interviews. Um, and when I was running out of time for prep, I'd sort from the most popular and just hope for the best. But I do recommend just still going with the exercise of sorting from easy to hard and working your way up once you've identified the patterns for like the easy questions. So that's the first piece of this. And the second piece is to pick a programming language. So while companies often care more about your problem-solving skills, it's essential to master at least one programming language for interviews. So pick one, whether it's Java or Kotlin or Python or C, whichever, and just be proficient at it. So know how to do all the basics like defining an object and iterating through a for loop, for example. Memorize it, learn it well. In a whiteboard interview, you're going to be expected to code in your language well, and you won't have additional tools like a syntax checker, for example. So yeah, don't go for breath here. I found that once you learn one or two programming languages really well, it's easy to pick up others. For the sake of interviews, though, just focus on learning one really well. And so the last piece of this is system design. This is more so important for mid to senior level positions, not so much entry level or junior. Like we discussed on the last slide, it's important you know how to design scalable, reliable systems that are ready for real world use. So the resources that I like, starting with the System Design Interview YouTube channel. This channel is inactive, but it still has some good videos based on system design questions you'd see in an interview. This is good because he'll go through these interview questions, show you his thought process, show you some questions you could ask the interview for clarity, etc. The next resource is the System Design Primer repo. This is a really excellent GitHub repo with a lot of content on how to design large-scale systems. Experienced devs even leverage this source, including me. Designing Data-Intensive Applications by Martin Kleppman is a really good book. This book is essentially a deep dive on how to build scalable systems. It will also explain modern data infrastructure in detail. This is also used by experienced devs that are designing large-scale information or large-scale systems, rather. This is a lot of information, but I'd still find like it's all very useful to keep this in mind for a framework for how you could study for technical interviews. For me, when I was preparing, I dedicate some days to coding questions then I dedicate some days to system design questions. And then with this system, it helped me not feel super overwhelmed because I was breaking it up that way. So, what is next? Certifications. I For me, I didn't need any. I honestly just recommend having knowledge of data structures and algorithms, system design, and a programming language. I feel like that's really all you need to be successful in a technical interview, and really all that they focus on. I don't even think portfolios necessarily are super important. At least for big tech, it really just boils down to the technical interview, which makes it really accessible for a lot of people. I feel like if they just study for that technical interview. And then how to stand out. So first thing, tech conferences. I went to Afrotech 2 times. Really great opportunity for meeting hiring managers and allowing them to put a face to the name. Also, if you apply, sometimes those applications are placed in a specific pool for the tech conference. At least this was done when I was recruiting at Afrotech. And also, it's just good for a recruiter or hiring manager to know your name when they're going through applications. Other thing too, tech events. So go on Meetup, look on TikTok, LinkedIn, any social media for happy hours or talks, or any opportunity to get into a room with a bunch of other engineers. I feel can be really helpful. It's just like a great way to help put you through to an interview you may not have gotten otherwise by just cold applying. So I definitely think just go to as many tech events as you can in your city. And then hackathons. I personally, for me, before I got to Apple, I didn't really do any hackathons, but I've heard from friends in this space, like working in big tech, that they loved the hackathons they did. I don't have a specific resource for finding hackathons, but Google, TikTok, LinkedIn, again, all good resources for finding one. I find that with hackathons, it ties into the theme of putting you in a situation where you get to network with other software engineers. For example, I recently participated in a hackathon at Apple for the first time in my life. Not only did I meet engineers from across the country that I wouldn't have otherwise, but our project was selected as a finalist to be presented to the vice president of software engineering at Apple. So it was an amazing experience, and I would definitely do it again. And then for additional resources, so I know on the other side I mentioned that I'm not the biggest fan of technical interviews. I don't think it's a gauge on anyone's capability of being an amazing engineer. Therefore, I have linked a resource here. It's called Hiring Without Whiteboards. And this GitHub lists all the companies that don't do a technical interview in a traditional sense. There's no whiteboarding, no leak code. They're more so talking to you, trying to understand your background and assessing your engineering capabilities through ways outside of just giving you a problem on recursion or something and expecting you to arrive at an answer without Google in like 30 minutes. So I recommend that resource. There's some great companies on there. And that is pretty much my presentation. I've linked my email and my LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out. Very happy to answer any more questions. Thank you again, Chanel, for having me.
You are so welcome. This was such an amazing session. I even learned so much, not only about you, but also about ways that I can kind of upskill even myself.
Yeah.
Like the repo, girl, never heard of
Yes. I stand by it. We don't need those technical interviews to get into great companies. So
I love that, and I hope you all were able to catch those links as well. Happy to share out those resources too. I'll put it in the description of the video later on for you all who want to watch the replay, and then also on LinkedIn, I'll also put that there too. But yeah, we're getting ready to lean into some awesome Q&A time with the most incredible Angelica. I did see some questions come in earlier on,
Mhm.
so happy to begin there. But as questions come, feel free, yeah, to drop them below. So first question from Nicole Pastor. If we have a non-technical background, what advice do you have? Or does Apple have any programs
Mhm.
for people who do not have a technical background? Great question.
Yeah, no, great question. I'm not sure what Apple has specifically for people that don't have a non-technical program. I know we have an Evolve program, but that's geared more toward new grads, whether it be bachelor program or a master's program of some sort. But I will say, as a person that didn't have a super technical background, at least, you know, coming up in my bachelor's program, no internships or anything. What I did is that, like, I went on Coursera, Udemy, any sort of online resource where I could learn data structures and algorithms, and just software engineering, the application or how to program in Java, for example. So I feel like if you're coming from a background where you have no exposure to, like, let's say, coding, I would start taking as many courses as I can. I would look up, you know, what are people in computer science classes? What classes are they taking? Create a schedule for yourself, take those classes, do like leak code on the side, watch YouTube videos on system design. I feel like the great thing about so much educational content now is that it's so accessible, and you could really create like this sort of curriculum for yourself and learn that way. And then like for technical interviews too, like as long as you know how to crack those and there's like a format for that, then honestly, I've worked with people at Apple, for example, that didn't have a computer science degree. Like these are people coming from like boot camps, for example. So it's really just what can I do to position myself to pass a technical interview? And you could modify that um, process and tailor it to what makes sense for you and your level of experience with, software engineering principles.
That was awesome. I hope that also answers your question, Nicole. Next question. I feel like you hinted on this, but we'll revisit. How do you prepare for the technical interview rounds with Apple?
Yeah. So with Apple specifically, it went back to using the resources that I had mentioned, like cracking the coding interview, the algorithm design manual. For Apple, I didn't have a ton of time to prepare. I had about a month and a half. So I just did cracking the coding interview. And then I went to Apple's section on LeetCode. I saw what kind of questions they were asking, like basically sorting it on popularity. So, like, let's say that their most popular questions were like linked lists or something. I would then go to like cracking the coding interview, algorithm design manual, whatever I could get my hand on, and I would look at linked lists. And I also recommend for any data structure that you're looking into, learn how to implement it from scratch. Because then for me, for some reason, that just helped me understand it inside out and just read like the resources for algorithm design, for understanding those data structures. See which data structures that company will typically have programming questions centered around, and then go from there.
Awesome answer as well. Hope that answered your question, Bill. Next question from Omu. I hope I'm saying that right. Thank you for being here, Angie. My question is, what
Mhm.
steps do you take to ensure that your code is clean and maintainable?
Ooh, I like this one a lot. So coming from a startup to Apple, I don't want to like, I feel like the standards for Apple for having clean code is just at a way higher level than the startup. So what I did is that I would look at existing examples in the code base for like what clean code that has actually been checked in looks like. And then I would follow how to do that. And then I would also just like look up resources on, you know, what principles are necessary to have clean code. Like, for example, there's one like dry, like do not repeat yourself. So I would look into principles like that, and make sure that my code was following all of that. I had like a little checklist for myself based off of my findings for what clean code looked like. And I would just go through that checklist, make sure that my code followed that checklist. And then that's when I would put up a PR for review. And I just kind of have that process every time.
Girl, I'm gonna need you to slide that resource over here.
I got you.
That's funny. Okay, that is great and excellent question. Also, Omil as well. We have some more love in the chat. Just again, thank you for sharing your journey, insights, and resources. Nicole also says thank you so much for answering her question. Gave her great advice.
Awesome. Great. Great.
And also, Nabil is given much love here too.
Mhm.
Cool. We have another question. I've been so from dystopian ninja.
Mhm.
I hope I said that right. Yes, bring your full self. Okay. I have been trying to interview with Apple for a long time.
Mhm.
What did you do to get the call? Also, thanks for the session.
Yeah. Oh, of course. Thank you for coming. People ask me this, and I wish I had like a better answer, but I really just went on LinkedIn. I was just applying for a bunch of Apple jobs, and I think like at that time, they were looking for people, and that's how I got a recruiter to reach out. But I think, networking is so important. So just like continuing to put yourself in positions where you could, talk to people that work in big tech that may work at Apple. Like you never know. I have friends that are hiring managers for Apple, and like they'll go to networking events or like tech events around the city. And so you just never know when you'll be in the same room with someone that could like give you an interview. And so I think starting there is a great step. But for my journey specifically, I just cold applied and somehow I got lucky. But yeah.
I absolutely agree. I think, yes, obviously you want to prepare. Yes, you want to be in the right rooms, but sometimes it's just the right time in the right place.
Right.
So I would just also like encourage folks to still remain hopeful, but make sure that you're putting, yourself out there. So if
Yeah.
people are able to come and find you and discover you, that you can obviously be a part of the conversation too. So I love that
Yeah.
that question. So other questions. Um, I have some questions. Oh, okay. Well, Ty has a question, so I'll go with Ty, and then I'm gonna ask my questions. Uh, so cool. Ty says, I really enjoyed listening to your story. My question is if you recommend going to grad school for furthering knowledge in certain pathways to computer science or into computer science, or kind of just using online resources. That's a good question.
That's a great question. Yeah, I honestly kind of go back and forth on this. Like, I am thankful, of course, for, going through grad school. And I think it has, helped me with interviews and like just sort of, at least for Apple, let's say, like they saw that I had a master's and then they like basically bumped me from the start to like ICT 3. So I think it could be useful in that way. But I feel like grad school has to be a decision where you want to further your knowledge in computer science, and that's like very much like just sort of a passion for you to do that. I wouldn't do it just to make myself a more competitive applicant, because it really just comes down to passing the technical interview, finding online resources like you mentioned for yourself that position you to pass the technical interview. I wouldn't do grad school for a technical interview. I would do it if you asked yourself, I really love, let's say, artificial intelligence. I'm really interested in this topic. I want to go to grad school because I want to learn more about this topic at a higher level. That's the question I would ask myself, like for going to grad school. Um, I will say for myself, I did do it for reasons that I don't fully agree with now. I just did it to prime myself for an interview, but in hindsight, it's really not necessary. I wouldn't say it didn't get me into Apple. That was just luck. So just ask yourself, like, do I want to go to grad school for myself, not just for, a career, like, just to pass a technical interview?
I think that also was an excellent question and also a great response as well.
Yeah.
We're seeing more love in the chat.
Thank you
Um,
guys.
so we love it. So kind of like pivoting a bit, wanting to
Mhm.
get a little bit more personal, right? How do you maintain a healthy work-life balance
Mhm.
while working in such a fast-paced industry
Yeah.
or even at, this company?
Yeah. So funny story. When I first joined Apple, I had no boundaries, like no boundaries between my personal life and work. So I would often take work home with me and I burned out so fast. And I wasn't doing my best work. And there was actually something that happened to me my first year. I had a manager who called me on a Friday night. I was out with friends, hanging out, having fun. He calls me at like 9:30, 10 p.m. And he's just like, I'm so sorry to do this, but there is a big production issue with Apple Card, and we need you to come home and deal with this. And I just remember feeling so upset because I was just like, it's a Friday night. It's like my first year back in New York City. Like, I have to come home and deal with this issue. And so I went home and I was on my manager or on a phone call with my manager until like 2 or 3 a.m. dealing with this issue. And I feel like those situations, like in my first year, I felt like I had to do it because I was just afraid if I didn't, like I would be ostracized or just, I don't know, a bad performance review or something. But if I could go back and tell myself, a lesson or give myself advice, I would say that everything, like most things can wait until, you know, working hours. Like you don't have to answer your phone at 9:30 p.m., for example, to go work on an issue. I think it's very important to have those boundaries not just with yourself, but like also with your manager. Like there should be core principles where you're like, I will not pick up my phone after 6:30 or something. And I found having those core principles now has helped my burnout. Like I don't feel burnt out anymore. I feel like I could do my best work. And so for me, like now at Apple, I make it a thing where I unplug, and I need to, because then if I don't, then I'm just going to keep spiraling into burnout, and then like my work quality will severely go down. So I'd say the most important thing is just like making sure to have like those audits with yourself, having a core list of like things I cannot do, and having those boundaries with not only yourself but like your manager.
Girl, that was good. Hello. Hello.
Thank you.
Y'all see why I love Angie, honey, getting us all together. Um, I can definitely say that I have felt that also.
Yeah.
And I think we've had conversations about this too, but just
Yeah.
saying like I really appreciate you being a champion of that as well. Especially as women of color, sometimes just in general, we want to do everything. But
Right.
taking space for ourselves, whether that's personally or in the workplace, is so important. So thank you also for sharing that intimate
Yeah.
moment.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So I think this is maybe the second to last question for the night. But Alex Paul, hey Alex, is asking. First of all, he says, "Awesome session, very insightful.
Mhm.
How do you stay up to date with the latest advancements in your career?"
This is a good question. And I have to be like so honest right now. I'm not the best at this. I feel like, when I'm working sort of in a silo at Apple, I'm more so focused on staying advanced within that silo. But I was very grateful to have an opportunity where I could move teams for a year and work on a totally different tech stack or stay on my current team. And I decided to move to the new team, Apple Pay Later, for a whole year. And I had to onboard again. I learned a new language, learned a whole different tech stack. And I did that sort of as a way to make sure that I guess, that I could change my whole paradigm comfortably without like failing or. So I think for me, I'm not the type of person that will like read tech blogs on like the latest language or anything like that. I just more so look for ways I could challenge myself in my current role, whether that's like, all hands on deck for another team, another tech stack, um, or like even just going to different tech talks within Apple about different technologies other teams are using. I'll do that. But I mainly just do it in the sphere of like my work. I don't really like go out of my way outside of work to stay advanced. But I it's a personal preference. If you're more inclined and more like passionate and interested in like what's going on that's new in the tech industry, I think that's great. For me, it's always just been like within the lens of like what can I do at work to gain more knowledge.
I love that response as well. And I can
Mhm.
definitely say sometimes, not only are you, like you said, is there a silo here,
Yeah.
specifically within work, because you're so
Yeah.
focused on making sure that you're delivering an excellent product.
Yeah.
Sometimes you forget that things in the world are revolving.
Right. Exactly.
Uh, so
Exactly.
we
Exactly.
are aligned there.
Yes.
Absolutely. I just want to remind everyone, if you're enjoying the session, please go ahead and like this video. Subscribe to our channel if you're on YouTube. If you're on LinkedIn, just go ahead and drop a comment and let Angie know and say thank you. And let us know what your favorite part of today's session was. Before we close out, just one last question.
Mhm.
And it wouldn't be Mentor Me Collective if we didn't ask about mentorship. So Angie would love to hear your thoughts. Like, what role has mentorship played in your career, and how
Yeah.
important do you think it is for others to really seek mentors in this space?
Yeah. Oh, it's honestly one of the most important things to have a mentor. And I feel like my trajectory at Apple would have been wildly different if I hadn't found a mentor within my first few months. Um, as someone joining Apple for the first time, I felt like I was just very terrified of going from a startup to a big tech, and I didn't really I didn't really know who to ask or like who to lean on for questions, just for like how can I advance my career? Like how do I learn all this information? How do I build scalable designs like at this big tech company? So I latched onto this guy. He unfortunately left Apple 2 years ago, but his name was Steven, and he was like the founding engineer for Apple Card. And whenever I would have my freakouts, I remember just setting one-on-ones on his calendar, freaking out and telling him like, "I feel so stupid. Everyone here is so smart. I don't belong here." And he'd tell me like, "Angie, you belong here. You because you got through an interview, like they saw something in you that they liked." And he was like, "To be honest, it took me like 2 or 3 years to feel competent at Apple." And he would just make me feel really good, and he would even go into meetings with me, for example, with stakeholders when I was terrified of speaking up. And he would just like chime in whenever he thought I was like freezing up a bit. He would always give me feedback after the meeting. Um, he just he made me feel like I could do so much more at Apple than I thought was possible for myself. And if I didn't have someone like that to lean on, I don't think I would have I think the imposter syndrome would have probably like swallowed me alive at Apple. So I feel like just find someone that you resonate with, someone that you really look up to, and lean on them. See if it's okay for them to be your mentor. I asked my manager if Steven could be my mentor, and he agreed, and like we had like that relationship for like 2 years. And so I think just look for someone that you look up to and see if you could connect with them and like form some sort of like mentorship relationship with them. But it's so important. I would not be here, I don't think, without my mentor. So
That was so beautiful. Oh, and so
thank
poetic.
you.
Uh, um,
Thank
Absolutely. I
you.
want to just like definitely say, first of all, Angie, thank you
Mhm.
so much for being with us this
Yeah.
evening. I know that you are so busy, and so to take out some of your time to give us insights, vulnerability, and really to share your honest opinion and thoughts really mean a lot to myself, and I'm sure even the community. We see more love coming in the chat. Um,
Yeah.
so
Thank you guys.
absolutely. So it is 7 o'clock. I definitely want to make sure we honor your time. Is there any last words that you definitely want for folks to take away? If there was nothing else that they heard, what is the one thing that you want them to take away from this session?
Ooh, that's good. I would definitely say, like, going back to the mentorship point, find someone that you sort of like aspire to be in a way, like someone you really like respect, and see what they're doing. Even if you don't like directly like ask them, can I be your mentee? Like just sort of see what they're doing, see like what they've done with their career, see how you could emulate that. And also for technical interviews, just buy a book on algorithms, go on Leak Code, be curious to like learn about data structures and algorithms, best coding practices. I feel like once you have like all that knowledge at your disposal, it's just passing a technical interview. You don't have to have a master's or like have crazy experience. As if you pass the technical interview, that's all that matters. So yeah.
That is amazing. Drop some love, some hearts in the chat, some fire emojis if you enjoyed today's session. Again, Angie, thank you so
Thanks
much.
so much. Yes.
Absolutely. Bye. All right, y'all. Just a couple of announcements before we officially go. Again, we're so grateful to have had Angie. If you want to follow her on LinkedIn, which you totally should, and connect with her, go ahead and find her at Angelica St. Rose. If you have not seen, or maybe you can't find her profile, if you go to our LinkedIn profile, and then you'll see the session from the events from today, she is tagged, so you all can go ahead and find her in that way. Also, just wanted to say, don't forget to stay connected and follow us. This month we have more content coming up. We do have couple of in-person events. One is actually going to be a community event. We're going to go to the Bronx and help with food insecurity here in New York City. There are different neighborhoods, impoverished neighborhoods in the city, in the Bronx, and also different parts of Harlem. And we want to make sure that they have access to fresh produce. So if you're interested in being a part of that, more than happy to have you all be a part of that. If you go ahead, and I'm not sure if you guys have subscribed to our calendar link, but if you're here, and obviously you might have gotten an email or maybe been pinged in our Slack channel, we will give you more information about that. We also have an upcoming session on investing with a wonderful, highly decorated financial advisor, works for JP Morgan Private Client. He works with multi-million, billion-dollar individuals. And he was like, how can I help folks within the Black and Brown community know how to make their money shake? So I said, listen, we welcome you. Okay, so that will also be in person at Chase downtown. More information to come, and then virtually we'll have more of these tech series happening too. So again, we appreciate all of you coming. Thank you so much for being a part of our community. We look forward to seeing you at a later time, whether that's in person or virtually. Wishing you all a very wonderful rest of your day. Bye, everyone.